Ambassador Kethvar had seen many species across the galaxy during his diplomatic career, but humans remained an enigma wrapped in contradictions. Standing 7 feet tall with crystalline skin that shifted colors based on his emotions, the Velthari diplomat had negotiated peace treaties with warrior races, trade agreements with merchant guilds, and scientific exchanges with the most advanced civilizations known to the Galactic Council. Yet here he was, aboard a human research vessel called Persistence, feeling more uncertain than he had in decades. The ship itself defied conventional design principles. Where other species built sleek, efficient vessels optimized for specific purposes, human ships looked like they had been assembled by committee during an earthquake. The Persistence was a patchwork of different technologies, some clearly human-made, others obviously salvaged or traded from various alien races. Hull plates didn't quite match, weapon systems appeared to have been retrofitted multiple times, and the entire vessel hummed with an odd harmonic that suggested the engines were running slightly off specification. Captain Sarah Chen stood barely 5.5 feet tall, making her seem almost childlike next to Kethvar's imposing frame. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her uniform bore the practical wear of someone who actually worked in it rather than simply wearing it for ceremonies. When she smiled at him during their initial meeting, Kethvar had been struck by how her eyes seemed to hold depths that didn't match her apparent youth. "Welcome aboard, Ambassador," she had said, her grip firm during their handshake. "I hope you don't mind the accommodations. We're not exactly built for diplomatic comfort." The crew was equally unremarkable at first glance. Dr. Marcus Webb, the chief scientist, was a lanky man with prematurely gray hair who seemed more interested in his data tablets than in making conversation. Engineer Rosa Santos barely acknowledged Kethvar's presence, too focused on what appeared to be a constant stream of repairs and modifications. Lieutenant Commander James Park, the tactical officer, was polite but distant, his attention clearly divided between his duties and something else that Kethvar couldn't identify. What puzzled the ambassador most was the mission itself. The Persistence was heading to the Kepler 442 system to investigate what human scientists called an anomalous energy signature. According to the briefing materials, long-range sensors had detected unusual quantum fluctuations in the system's outer planets. It seemed like routine scientific work, the kind of research mission that dozens of species conducted throughout the galaxy every day. So why had the human government specifically requested a Velthari observer? And why had the Galactic Council considered this request important enough to assign their most experienced ambassador? Kethvar's skin shifted to a pale blue, reflecting his confusion as he stood in his assigned quarters. The room was functional, but cramped, clearly designed by and for humans. Everything seemed smaller than necessary, as if the builders had been working under severe resource constraints. Yet despite the apparent limitations, every surface showed evidence of careful thought and multiple purposes. The desk could fold into the wall to create more floor space. The sleeping area contained hidden storage compartments. Even the lighting could be adjusted not just for brightness, but for color spectrum, apparently, to accommodate the needs of different species. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. Captain Chen entered when he granted permission, carrying 2 steaming mugs. "Coffee," she explained, offering him one. "Dr. Webb synthesized it to be safe for Velthari physiology. Thought you might be curious about human stimulants." The gesture surprised him. Most species he had encountered during diplomatic missions maintained formal protocols, especially with first contact situations. Humans seemed to blur the lines between professional and personal interaction in ways that made Kethvar's crystalline skin flicker with uncertainty. "Thank you, Captain," he said, accepting the mug. The liquid was dark and aromatic, with a bitter complexity that was not unpleasant. "I confess, I am curious about this mission. The energy signatures you are investigating do not seem significant enough to warrant Council attention." Chen settled into the room's only chair, leaving Kethvar to perch somewhat awkwardly on the edge of the sleeping platform. Her casual demeanor continued to puzzle him. In his experience, ship commanders maintained strict hierarchical distance from everyone, especially foreign dignitaries. "Honestly, I think there's more to this than we've been told," she admitted. "The energy patterns are unusual but not unprecedented. Similar signatures have been detected in 17 other systems over the past 2 years. Always in the outer system, always around gas giants or asteroid fields, and always gone by the time anyone arrives to investigate." Kethvar's skin shifted to orange, indicating increased interest. "This is the 18th investigation?" "That we know of." Chen sipped her coffee, her expression growing more serious. "The thing is, Ambassador, we're not the only ones interested in these signatures. Long-range sensors have detected ship movements from the Hegemony, the Synthesis Collective, and at least 3 other major powers. Everyone's sending research vessels to investigate these phenomena, but nobody's talking about what they're finding." The Hegemony. Kethvar's skin went deep purple at the mention of that name. The Hegemony was a loose alliance of species that believed in aggressive expansion and resource extraction. They had been contained by the Galactic Council for centuries, but recent intelligence suggested they were becoming more active in unexplored regions. "You suspect this is more than scientific curiosity," Kethvar observed. "I suspect someone has found something they don't want to share," Chen replied. "And I suspect that's why you're here, Ambassador. The Council wants an independent observer to see what we find." Over the next few days, as the Persistence traveled toward the Kepler 442 system, Kethvar found himself drawn into the daily rhythms of human shipboard life. The crew operated with an efficiency that seemed chaotic from the outside, but clearly worked for them. Duty shifts overlapped in complex patterns that ensured critical systems were always monitored by multiple people. Meals were communal affairs where rank seemed to matter less than competence and humor. Dr. Webb proved to be more talkative once engaged on scientific topics. He showed Kethvar the energy readings they were pursuing, and the ambassador had to admit the patterns were genuinely unusual. The quantum fluctuations suggested massive energy expenditures, but the signatures didn't match any known natural phenomena or technological processes. "The mathematical models don't make sense," Webb explained, his gray hair disheveled from running his hands through it. "The energy output suggests something the size of a small moon, but there's no corresponding mass. It's as if something is converting matter directly into energy, but with an efficiency that shouldn't be possible according to known physics." Engineer Santos was less forthcoming, but Kethvar noticed that she spent considerable time reviewing tactical specifications rather than standard maintenance protocols. When he mentioned this observation to Captain Chen, her expression became carefully neutral. "Rosa likes to be prepared for contingencies," was all she would say. Lieutenant Commander Park remained the most enigmatic crew member. During their few conversations, Kethvar noticed that the humans' questions seemed designed to gather information about Velthari defensive capabilities, military doctrine, and industrial capacity. When pressed, Park claimed to be conducting a routine diplomatic assessment, but his knowledge of military affairs seemed far too detailed for a simple tactical officer. The ship itself continued to surprise Kethvar. What had initially appeared to be haphazard construction revealed itself to be remarkably adaptable design. The mismatched hull plates weren't evidence of poor planning, but rather modular construction that allowed rapid reconfiguration. The oddly humming engines weren't running off specification. They were actually running multiple specifications simultaneously, allowing the ship to adjust its performance characteristics in real time. "Human engineering philosophy is different from most species," Chen explained during one of their evening conversations. "Most civilizations optimize for specific performance parameters. We optimize for adaptability. Our ships might not be the fastest or the most efficient, but they can handle situations that would cripple more specialized designs. It seems inefficient, Kethvar observed, though his skin showed curious yellow rather than critical red. Inefficient in normal circumstances, Chen agreed, but human history has taught us that normal circumstances can change very quickly. We prefer to sacrifice some efficiency for the ability to handle the unexpected. As they approached the Kepler 442 system, long-range sensors began detecting the energy signatures that had brought them here. The readings were stronger than expected, suggesting that whatever was causing them was still active. More troubling were the additional contacts appearing on the edge of sensor range. "Multiple ships," Park reported during the morning briefing. "At least 6 different configurations, possibly more. They're maintaining distance, but they're definitely watching the same area we're heading toward." Dr. Webb looked up from his data analysis. "The energy patterns are intensifying. Whatever's happening out there, it's building toward something significant." Captain Chen studied the tactical display, her expression thoughtful. "How long until we reach optimal scanning range?" 14 hours at current speed, Park replied. "And how long until those other ships could intercept us if they decided to?" "Depends on their capabilities, but probably less than that." Kethvar felt his skin shift through several colors as he processed the implications. This was no longer a simple research mission. They were heading into a situation where multiple galactic powers had converged, all apparently interested in the same phenomenon. The potential for conflict was significant. "Captain," he said carefully, "perhaps we should consider requesting council support before proceeding." Chen's smile held no warmth. "Ambassador, with respect, by the time council support could arrive, whatever's happening out there will probably be over. Sometimes you have to make decisions with incomplete information." "That seems unwise." "Maybe. But humans have survived this long by being willing to take calculated risks when the situation demands it." As if summoned by their conversation, Engineer Santos appeared in the briefing room. "Captain, we've got a problem. Those energy signatures are interfering with our long-range communications. We can send messages, but we can't guarantee they'll get through intact." Kethvar's skin went deep red. They were heading into an unknown situation, potentially facing hostile forces, and now they were cut off from outside support. Every instinct developed over centuries of diplomatic experience screamed that this was exactly the kind of situation where discretion was the better part of valor. But as he looked around the room at the human crew, he realized something that made his crystalline skin flicker with confusion. They weren't afraid. Concerned, yes. Alert, certainly. But not afraid. If anything, they seemed more focused, more determined than they had been during the routine parts of their journey. Dr. Webb was already recalibrating his instruments to account for the interference. Santos was reviewing backup communication protocols. Park was running tactical simulations on his console, and Captain Chen was studying the sensor readings with the kind of intense concentration that Kethvar had only seen from generals planning major military campaigns. "All right, people," Chen said finally. "We knew this might get complicated. Let's see what we're dealing with before we make any decisions about how to handle it." As the persistence continued toward the unknown energy source, Kethvar found himself wondering what he had gotten himself into. The humans around him seemed calm and competent, but he was beginning to suspect that their apparent casualness masked something much more dangerous. These weren't just researchers and diplomats. They were something else entirely. And he was about to find out exactly what that meant. His skin shifted to a deep purple as a new possibility occurred to him. What if the Council hadn't sent him here to observe human scientific capabilities? What if they had sent him to observe something else entirely? And what if the humans knew exactly why he was really here? The questions multiplied as the persistence drew closer to whatever was waiting for them in the outer reaches of the Kepler 442 system. Soon, Kethvar suspected, he would have his answers. He only hoped he would survive long enough to appreciate them. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came when Dr. Webb's instruments registered energy levels that should have been impossible. Kethvar watched the scientist's face pale as he ran the readings through his systems for the third time, each result confirming what his equipment was telling him. "Captain," Webb's voice carried a tremor that hadn't been there before. "We need to stop, right now." Captain Chen moved to Webb's station, studying the displays over his shoulder. Kethvar followed, his skin shifting to anxious orange as he tried to understand the human symbols and readings. "These power levels," Webb continued, his hands shaking slightly as he adjusted his instruments. "They're not just unusual, they're impossible. According to these readings, something in this system is generating more energy than a small star, but it's doing it in focused bursts rather than continuous output." Park looked up from his tactical console, his expression grim. "Captain, we've got another problem. Those ships that were maintaining distance?" "They're not all maintaining distance anymore. I'm reading 3 vessels on intercept courses, ETA approximately 6 hours. "Can you identify them?" Chen asked. "2 hegemony destroyers and something I don't recognize. The unknown ship is big, really big. Dreadnought class, maybe larger." Kethvar's skin went deep red. Hegemony destroyers were among the most heavily armed ships in known space, designed for aggressive first-strike tactics against civilian targets. If the hegemony was sending military vessels rather than research ships, they weren't interested in scientific discovery. "Ambassador," Chen turned to face him directly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Did the Council send you here just to observe, or is there something else we should know?" The question caught Kethvar off guard. His skin flickered through several colors before settling on a reluctant yellow. "The Council believes that these energy signatures may be related to ancient technology. There are references in historical archives to similar phenomena, always associated with—" He paused, searching for the right words. "With weapons of extraordinary power." "Weapons," Chen repeated flatly. "And the Council thought it would be a good idea to send a single research vessel to investigate potential ancient weapons?" "The Council believed the probability of finding functional technology was minimal," Kethvar admitted. "These were meant to be preliminary surveys to determine if further investigation was warranted." Santos laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Preliminary survey? Right up until the moment we run into hegemony warships and mystery dreadnoughts." Dr. Webb's instruments chimed again, drawing their attention back to the energy readings. "Captain, whatever's generating these signatures just changed its pattern. The energy output is increasing, and it's becoming more focused. It's almost as if—" "As if what, Doctor?" "As if something is powering up." The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If ancient weapons were indeed present in the system, and if they were somehow being activated, then every ship in the area was potentially in mortal danger. More concerning was the possibility that one of the approaching vessels had found a way to control whatever was generating the energy signatures. "Options," Chen said simply. Park was the first to respond. "We could run. Our engines are configured for speed over firepower. We might be able to reach the system edge before those destroyers intercept us." "And abandon whatever's out there to the hegemony?" Webb shook his head. "If this is what the ambassador suggests, we can't let them have it. We also can't stop them," Santos pointed out. "This is a research vessel, not a warship. 2 destroyers would turn us into scrap metal in about 30 seconds. Kethvar found himself studying the humans as they discussed their options. Their casual demeanor from earlier was gone, replaced by focused professionalism that reminded him uncomfortably of military briefings he had attended during various galactic conflicts. These weren't just scientists and researchers. They were something else, something that was only now becoming apparent. "There is a third option," Chen said quietly. We continue toward the energy source and try to figure out what we're dealing with before anyone else gets there. That's not an option, Park protested. That's suicide. Maybe. But if this is ancient weapons technology, and if the hegemony gets control of it, a lot more people are going to die than just us. Kethvar's skin shifted through several colors as he processed the implications of Chen's words. The humans were actually considering sacrificing themselves to prevent the hegemony from acquiring potentially devastating weapons. It was either incredibly noble or completely insane, and he wasn't sure which. Captain, he said carefully, with respect, this is not your responsibility. The Council should handle this situation through proper diplomatic channels. Chen's smile was sharp and cold. Ambassador, with respect, by the time the Council finishes debating this situation, the hegemony will have whatever's out there and be halfway to their nearest military base. You cannot seriously be considering engaging 2 destroyers with a research vessel. I'm not considering engaging anyone, Chen replied. I'm considering getting to that energy source first and figuring out how to deny it to hostile forces. There's a difference. Dr. Webb looked up from his instruments again. Captain, we're close enough now for detailed scans. I'm reading... This can't be right. What are you seeing, Doctor? There's a structure. Artificial. Definitely not natural formation. It's massive, easily 10 kilometers across. And it's... Webb paused, running the scans again. It appears to be partially embedded in an asteroid, but the asteroid shows signs of artificial modification. Someone built this thing, Captain, and it's old. Really old. How old? Based on material decay rates and cosmic radiation exposure, I'd estimate at least 50,000 years. Maybe more. The silence that followed Webb's announcement was profound. 50,000 years predated most known civilizations. Whatever they had found was a relic from the deep past, from species that had vanished long before current galactic powers had achieved spaceflight. Santos was the first to break the silence. 50,000 years and it's still generating energy signatures visible from multiple star systems? What the hell did these people build? Something we probably shouldn't let the hegemony get their hands on, Park muttered. Kethvar's skin was cycling through colors so rapidly it created an almost strobing effect. Ancient weapons technology of this magnitude could destabilize the entire galactic balance of power. If the hegemony acquired it, their military advantage could become insurmountable. But equally concerning was the realization that the humans around him didn't seem surprised by this development. You knew, he said suddenly, his skin settling on accusatory red. You knew what we might find here. Chen met his gaze steadily. We suspected. Human intelligence services have been tracking these energy signatures for over a year. We've been monitoring hegemony movements, and they've been showing unusual interest in systems where similar signatures have appeared. Then why bring me? Why involve the Council at all? Because, Chen said simply, we needed a witness, someone the Council would trust to verify what we found here. Before Kethvar could respond, Park's console erupted in warning signals. Captain, the incoming ships have changed course. They're moving faster now, and they've been joined by additional vessels. I'm reading at least 8 ships now, multiple configurations. Time to intercept? 4 hours, maybe less for the fastest ones. Dr. Webb's instruments chimed again, and his face went even paler. Captain, the energy output from that structure just increased by a factor of 10. Whatever it's doing, it's building toward something significant. Could someone have already reached it? Possible, but I'm not reading any ships in the immediate vicinity. It might be responding to the presence of multiple vessels in the system. Chen studied the displays for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. All right, people, here's what we're going to do. Dr. Webb, I want continuous scans of that structure. Find me an access point, a docking bay, Anything that looks like we can get inside. Santos, I want our engines ready for emergency power on a moment's notice. Park, track those incoming ships and prepare defensive countermeasures. Defensive countermeasures? Kethvar asked. This is a research vessel. Santos grinned, and for the first time, Kethvar saw something predatory in the expression. Ambassador? Human research vessels are built to survive in hostile environments. That includes hostile environments with people shooting at us. As if to demonstrate her point, Santos activated a series of panels that Kethvar hadn't noticed before. Suddenly, the bridge was displaying weapon systems, defensive screens, and tactical options that seemed far too sophisticated for a simple research vessel. The Persistence is what humans call a Q-ship, Chen explained, noting Kethvar's shocked expression. Officially, we're a research vessel. Unofficially, we're prepared for situations exactly like this one. You deceived me. We gave you exactly the information we were authorized to share with a council observer, Chen corrected. The fact that you assumed we were helpless civilians says more about council preconceptions than it does about human honesty. Kethvar's skin was pure purple now, indicating complete confusion. Everything he thought he understood about this mission had been wrong. The humans weren't innocent researchers stumbling into a dangerous situation. They were intelligence operatives conducting a carefully planned operation, and he was... What exactly was he? What is my actual role here? He asked. To witness, Chen said simply. And hopefully, to help us prevent a galactic war. Before he could ask what she meant, Dr. Webb called out excitedly, Captain, I found something. There's definitely an access point on the structure. It looks like a docking bay, size for ships much larger than ours but still accessible. But Captain, he paused, his excitement fading. The energy readings from inside that structure are off the charts. Whatever's in there is active, and it's powerful enough to sterilize entire star systems. Then we'd better get there first, Chen said grimly. As the Persistence accelerated toward the ancient structure, Kethvar found himself gripping the edge of the console. The humans around him were calm and focused, but he was beginning to understand that their calmness wasn't ignorance or naivety. It was the calmness of professionals who had trained for exactly this situation. The question that terrified him was, what exactly had they trained to do? Over the next 3 hours, as they approached the ancient structure, Kethvar watched the human crew transform. Dr. Webb wasn't just a scientist. He was an expert in xenoarchaeology and ancient technologies. Santos wasn't just an engineer, she was a specialist in alien power systems and defensive technologies. Park wasn't just a tactical officer, he was an intelligence operative with extensive knowledge of hegemony military capabilities. And Captain Chen wasn't just a ship commander, she was something else entirely, something that Kethvar was only beginning to comprehend. Ambassador, she said, as they prepared for final approach to the structure. I want you to understand something. In about an hour, we're going to board a 50,000-year-old weapon platform that's been dormant for longer than most species have existed. We're going to do this while being pursued by hostile forces who want to claim that platform for themselves. And we're going to try to ensure that whatever we find in there doesn't end up being used to devastate civilized space. This is insane, Kethvar protested. You should contact the council, the fleet, someone with authority to handle this situation. Ambassador, Chen's voice was gentle but implacable. We are the people with authority to handle this situation, and you're about to find out exactly what that means. As the ancient structure filled their view screen, its alien geometries both beautiful and terrifying, Kethvar realized that everything he thought he knew about humans was about to change. The question was whether he would survive long enough to appreciate the full scope of that change. The docking bay of the ancient structure was larger than most starship hangars Kethvar had ever seen. Its walls covered with symbols and technologies that predated known galactic civilization by tens of thousands of years. As the persistence settled into the massive chamber, emergency lighting activated automatically, casting eerie shadows across surfaces that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Atmosphere is breathable for both human and Velthari physiology, Dr. Webb reported, his instruments working overtime to analyze their surroundings. Gravity is approximately Earth standard. Temperature is stable. Whatever this place is, it's been maintaining life support systems for 50 millennia. Captain Chen stood at the center of the bridge, no longer the casual researcher Kethvar had first met. Her bearing was that of a military commander, and her crew responded to her with the precision of Special Forces operatives. Time until the hegemony arrives? 47 minutes, Park responded. Maybe less if they're willing to risk structural damage to their ships. And the other vessels? Still inbound, but they're maintaining more cautious approach speeds. I think they're letting the hegemony take the risk of going in first. Santos looked up from her engineering station. Captain, this structure is interfacing with our systems. Not aggressively, but it's definitely scanning us. Power levels throughout the ship are being analyzed, crew biosigns are being monitored, even our computer databases are being examined. Examined how? It's reading them, not copying or altering, just reading. Like it's trying to understand what we are. Kethvar's skin shifted to alarmed red. This facility is scanning us? What kind of defensive systems might it have? That's what we're here to find out, Chen said grimly. Dr. Webb, what can you tell us about the internal structure? Webb consulted his instruments, his face reflecting both excitement and terror. The facility extends deep into the asteroid, with multiple levels and chambers. I'm reading massive power cores, what appear to be manufacturing facilities, and something that looks like it might be a central control complex. But, Captain, the energy readings from the lower levels are unprecedented. Explain. The power sources down there are generating energy on the scale of stellar phenomena, not fusion, not antimatter, something else entirely. If those systems were to overload or be improperly activated, how much damage are we talking about? Webb swallowed hard. Conservative estimate? This entire star system would be sterilized. Liberal estimate? The explosion could be detected from several star systems away. The silence that followed was profound. Kethvar realized they weren't just dealing with ancient weapons technology. They were dealing with something that could potentially destroy entire regions of space if mishandled. The implications were staggering. Ambassador, Chen turned to face him directly. I need you to contact the Council immediately. Use our emergency quantum communicator. Tell them what we found, and tell them that under no circumstances should anyone attempt to claim or move this facility. What about the hegemony ships? We'll handle the hegemony. Handle them how? You have one ship against multiple destroyers. Chen's smile was cold and deadly. Ambassador, you still don't understand what you're looking at, do you? The Persistence isn't just a research vessel disguised as a warship. We're a first contact and containment team. We specialize in situations exactly like this one. Before Kethvar could ask what she meant, the ancient facility around them began to change. Lights that had been dormant for millennia flickered to life along the walls. Mechanical sounds echoed through the chamber as systems that had slept for eons began to awaken. It's responding to our presence, Webb reported, his voice filled with wonder and terror. The facility is coming online. Is that good or bad? Park asked. I have absolutely no idea. A new voice suddenly filled the chamber, speaking in a language none of them recognized but somehow understanding perfectly. The words seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. Welcome, children of the void. I am the curator of this facility. You have activated emergency protocols by arriving during a period of hostile approach. Please state your intentions and authorization codes. The humans exchanged glances, but showed no surprise at being addressed by an alien artificial intelligence. Kethvar's skin cycled through several colors of confusion and alarm. "We are explorers from the Terran Federation and the Galactic Council," Chen responded aloud. "We're here to investigate energy signatures detected from this facility. We don't have authorization codes." "Scanning," the curator replied. "Species identification, humans and Velthari. Threat assessment, minimal direct threat, significant potential for collateral damage through ignorance. Historical analysis, no previous contact with this facility or its builders. Current situation, multiple hostile vessels approaching with apparent intent to claim facility assets." "That's accurate," Chen confirmed. "Can you tell us what this place is?" "This facility serves as a research station and defensive installation constructed by the predecessors approximately 47,000 years ago. Primary function, development and testing of reality alteration technologies. Secondary function, automated defense against species demonstrating aggressive expansionist behavior." Kethvar's skin went pure white with shock. Reality alteration technologies were theoretical concepts that most physicists considered impossible. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical, and the potential for catastrophic failure was beyond calculation. "The approaching hostile vessels," Chen continued. "They represent the hegemony, an aggressive alliance that has been expanding throughout this region of space. What defensive capabilities does this facility possess?" "Analyzing threat profile of approaching vessels," the curator responded. "Hegemony technology is approximately 47,000 years inferior to predecessor capabilities. Defensive protocols recommend complete elimination of hostile forces to prevent technological contamination." "Wait," Kethvar interjected, finding his voice. "Complete elimination? How many ships are approaching?" "Current count indicates 12 vessels of various classes, with additional vessels maintaining observation positions at system periphery. Estimated crew complement, approximately 8,000 individuals." 8,000 people. The curator was casually discussing the elimination of 8,000 people as a defensive protocol. "Is there an alternative?" Chen asked. "Can the approaching ships be disabled rather than destroyed?" "Analyzing. Alternative protocols available. Hostile vessels can be rendered inoperative through selective system failures rather than complete destruction. However, this approach carries increased risk of technological exposure." "What kind of risk?" "Disabled vessels may be recovered by Allied forces, potentially providing access to predecessor defensive technologies. Historical analysis suggests this has led to significant galactic instability in previous cycles." Previous cycles. The implications of that phrase sent chills through Kethvar's crystalline structure. How many times had this happened before? How many civilizations had encountered predecessor technology and either been destroyed by it or corrupted by its power? Dr. Webb looked up from his instruments, his face pale. "Captain, the hegemony ships have entered the outer system. They're not slowing down. It looks like they're planning to force their way into the facility." "Curator," Chen said urgently, "if the hegemony forces attempt to board this facility, what will happen?" "Automatic defensive systems will activate. Boarders will be eliminated through various means, including disintegration, temporal displacement, and conversion to base elements. Facility security will be maintained at all costs. And if they attempt to remove facility components or technologies, such actions would trigger complete facility lockdown followed by controlled detonation to prevent technological contamination. Estimated blast radius would encompass the entire star system." The humans exchanged looks that conveyed volumes of unspoken communication. Kethvar realized that they had known, or at least suspected, something like this might happen. They had come here not as innocent researchers, but as specialists in containing exactly this type of situation. "Curator," Chen said carefully, Are there protocols for transferring facility oversight to current galactic authorities? Analyzing. Current galactic civilization demonstrates insufficient technological and philosophical development for safe oversight of predecessor technologies. However, emergency protocols exist for temporary cooperation with species demonstrating adequate responsibility. What would constitute adequate responsibility? Species must demonstrate: first, capacity for self-sacrifice to prevent widespread harm. Second, ability to prioritize collective welfare over individual advancement. Third, commitment to preventing technological proliferation to unsuitable civilizations. Kethvar realized with growing horror what the curator was describing. It wanted someone willing to sacrifice themselves to keep these technologies out of the wrong hands. Someone willing to prioritize the safety of the galaxy over their own survival or advancement. Someone willing to act as guardians rather than exploiters. The humans were nodding as if they understood perfectly. "Captain," Park called out, "hegemony ships are 30 minutes out and accelerating. They've launched what look like assault shuttles. They're not planning to negotiate." Chen turned to Kethvar. "Ambassador, get that message to the Council now. Tell them what we've found, and tell them that this facility cannot be allowed to fall into the wrong hands under any circumstances." "What are you planning to do?" "Our job." As Kethvar frantically composed his message to the Council, he watched the human crew prepare for what was clearly a suicide mission. They were going to stand between the hegemony and technology that could reshape the galaxy, knowing that they probably wouldn't survive the encounter. But as he watched them work, he began to understand something that changed his entire perception of humanity. They weren't doing this out of desperation or ignorance. They were doing it because they had trained for exactly this situation. Humanity had known that ancient technologies existed in the galaxy, and they had prepared teams specifically to deal with the consequences of finding them. The Persistence wasn't just a research vessel or even a disguised warship. It was a containment unit, designed to prevent catastrophic technologies from falling into the wrong hands. And its crew weren't just scientists and soldiers. They were guardians, willing to sacrifice everything to protect a galaxy that didn't even know they existed. "Curator," Chen said as the hegemony ships drew closer, "we're prepared to serve as temporary overseers if necessary. What do you need us to do?" Analyzing crew profiles. Psychological assessment complete. The human crew of this vessel demonstrates acceptable compatibility with Guardian protocols, preparing to transfer provisional authority. Kethvar's skin went through a rapid series of color changes as the implications hit him. The humans weren't just willing to die to prevent the hegemony from claiming this technology. They were willing to take responsibility for it, to become its guardians for however long that responsibility lasted. As the first hegemony assault shuttles entered the facility's defensive perimeter and were instantly vaporized by weapons that bent space and time itself, Kethvar finally understood what real fear was. Not the fear of death or pain, but the fear of what sentient beings were capable of when they truly committed to something larger than themselves. The humans around him weren't just brave. They were something far more terrifying and inspiring. They were willing to carry burdens that would crush most species simply because someone had to do it. And as the battle for the predecessor facility began in earnest, with reality itself being weaponized by defense systems beyond imagination, Kethvar realized that he was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just another species with advanced weapons, but a species that understood that with great power came responsibilities too terrible for most civilizations to bear. The humans were about to become guardians of technologies that could remake the universe. And somehow, despite everything he had seen, Kethvar found himself believing they might actually be worthy of that responsibility. The day he stood beside humans was the day he learned what real fear was. Not fear of the ancient weapons or the hostile forces arrayed against them, but fear of the terrible majesty of a species willing to sacrifice everything to protect others. It was a fear that would reshape his understanding of what it meant to be truly civilized.